I'd like to call to order the July 8th, 2014 meeting of the Danville Public School Board. Ms. Jordan, can you call the roll?
Mrs. Hall?
Here.
Ms. Bryant?
Here.
Dr. Campbell?
Present.
Dr. Paul-Hamus?
Here.
Ms. Hughes?
Here.
Ms. Jones? Here. Mr. Goode?
Here. And just to let the board members and the public know, the reason I'm presiding over the meeting right now is that since we no longer technically have a chairman anymore, we need someone to run the elections for chairman, vice chairman, clerk, and deputy clerk. So with that said, I will now open the floor for nominations for chairman. And remember, nominations do not need a second.
Spencer,
Yes.
I would like to nominate Dr. Edward Paul-Hamus, Jr.
Are there any other nominees for chairman? Hearing none, the nominations are closed for chairman. Ms. Jordan, can you call the roll? And keep in mind, an affirmative yes is a vote for chairman for Dr. Paul-Hamus.
Okay. Mrs. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
Dr. Paul-Hamus?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Goode?
Yes. And I will now open the floor for nominations for vice chairman.
Mr. Spencer, for 11 years of experience, I'd like to nominate Renee Hughes.
Are there any other nominations from the floor?
Mr. Spencer, I'd like to nominate Terry Hall. Her diligence and energy have served the school board well in the last several years.
The nominees are Renee Hughes and Terry Hall. And with that, hearing none, no more, I will close the nominations for vice chairman. We will now call the roll for election to vice chairman for Renee Hughes. So once again, a yes or an aye is an affirmative vote for Renee Hughes as vice chairman or chairperson.
Okay. Ms. Bryant?
Okay, I'm confused. What?
We're now calling the roll to elect Renee Hughes as vice chairperson.
Okay.
An affirmative yes or aye is a vote for Renee Hughes as vice chairman.
And if someone says nothing, what that would?
I guess it's an abstention, or it's not a no vote, but I guess you're not voting at all. She would need a majority. She would need 5 votes.
Okay. I just was not clear with the direction.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Bryant, what's your vote?
Excuse me?
Are you voting yes or no?
He didn't say we voted no. He said
Yes.
yes or
Okay, abstain?
nothing.
Or no vote, of course, would also. So I'm sorry about that. A no vote would be.
That's why I was confused.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No.
Okay. Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
Dr. Paul-Hamus?
No.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Gould?
No.
Mrs. Hall?
No.
And what was the vote total?
We have 4 noes and 3 for yes.
Okay. We will now call the roll for election of vice chairman of Terry Hall. Once again, yes vote or aye is affirmative for yes. No vote is affirmative for no. You do not want to elect Terry Hall.
Dr. Campbell?
No.
Dr. Paul-Hamus?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
No.
Ms. Jones?
No.
Mr. Gould?
Yes.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
We have 4 yeses, 3 noes.
Yeah, you said 4 yeses and 3 noes.
Yes.
Okay. And what was the vote total on Renee? Ms. Hughes?
Ms. Hughes has 3 for yes, 4 for no.
Okay.
Mrs. Hall has 4 yes, 3 no.
Okay. Ms. Hall is the elected vice chairperson. I will now open the floor for election for clerk. We'll take nominees.
Mr. Spencer, I nominate Mrs. Lord Cassidy.
Second. Oh, we don't need seconds.
Are there any other nominees from the floor? Hearing none, I will now close the nominations for election of clerk. Can you call the roll, Ms. Jordan?
Dr. Paul-Hamus?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Gould?
Yes.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
I will now open the nominations for election of a deputy clerk. Are there any nominations from the floor?
Mr. Spencer, I nominate Liz Jordan.
Are there any other nominations from the floor? Hearing none, I now close the nominations. Can you call the roll? Ms. Jordan?
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Gould?
Yes.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
Dr. Paul Haynes?
Yes.
I'll now yield to the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. All right, the next item on our agenda will be to establish the meeting schedule for the year. We have historically had our monthly meeting on Thursday evenings, the first Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. And then we have been for some time having work sessions on Friday, 15 days later in the morning hours. And so what is your pleasure on our regular monthly meeting for this year?
Mr. Chair, I move that we keep the regular meeting as it is now, what is it? First Thursday of every
Thursday.
month.
All right.
I second.
Second on that? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Bryant. So that's to have the regular monthly meeting the first Thursday each month, 7 p.m. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
when fall comes, it gets darker earlier. So is it possible that maybe we could move the meeting up? Or does it have to be at 7?
Earlier start?
Yes.
That would,
Just
that would certainly be a possibility if that's what the group would like to do. The current motion is for 7 p.m. on the first Thursday. An amendment to change the time would be in order.
Make your amendment to what time?
I would like to make that amendment.
For what time?
6,
6 p.m.?
yes.
All right, do we have a second on the amendment?
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to amend the original motion to change the time to 6 p.m. Any discussion on the amendment? Is everyone ready to vote on the amendment? All right, then Ms. Jordan, please call the roll.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Gould?
Yes.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
Dr. Paul Haynes?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
All right, that now puts before us the main motion with the amendment attached. So it would now say that we hold the regular monthly meeting on the first Thursday at 6 p.m. Does everyone understand that's now what's under consideration? All right, any further discussion, additional amendments? Then let's call the roll, please.
Mr. Gould?
Yes.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
Dr. Paul Haynes?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Very good. So the regular monthly meeting, first Thursday, 7 p.m. And this does, of course,
6
allow...
p.m.
Excuse me, 6 p.m. Let me just strike that through so I don't misread it again. 6 p.m. It does allow, when there are holidays or other interference, for the board to move as needed on a month-by-month basis. All right, then historically, we've had the work session on a Friday morning. There's been some discussion, I know, of possibly moving that to the evening hours some day other than other than Friday. And it may be that we stop calling it a work session because it's really kind of looked like a regular meeting without some of the formality, but very similar as far as content. So what is your pleasure for a second meeting each month?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
would move that we hold our second meeting each month, 14 days following our regular meeting at 6 p.m.
All right, 14 days later at 6 p.m. And did you specify that as a work session or?
I
Just-
did not specify.
Okay. 14 days later, again at 6 p.m. That would be the third Thursday of each month. Do we have a second?
I can second that.
All right, thank you very much. Motion from Mr. Gould and second from Ms. Hall. Discussion on that second monthly meeting.
Mr. Chairman, is this going to be considered like the work session? So it replaces the work session?
It would be
per se?
replacing the work session. As we get further into the discussion or after we've tried it a month or two, we might want to put a different title on it. Any other discussion on the motion? All right, the motion is to hold a second meeting each month, 14 days after the regular monthly meeting, 6 p.m. Let's call the roll, please.
Mr. Gould?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Dr. Plamus?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell?
No.
Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes.
All right, the motion passes. And that then would bring us, I believe, to the special sessions for discipline cases. I've been thinking that if we moved both meetings to evenings, that we could tack on the afternoon of evening meetings, discipline hearings, but that's certainly not the only option.
Do you mean prior to the meeting starting?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That could potentially be a long afternoon and evening.
That's true, it could. And it would raise questions of whether we want to take a long enough break to go home for dinner or make other arrangements here. So if you'd rather not do that, we can certainly hear other,
What are the other options?
Any day, anytime.
it could be still in the late afternoons, but on a different day of the week from the evening meetings. It could be, I think, without knowing all the details of the timing of discipline, it could probably be on the weeks in between the two evening meetings we have looked at, so perhaps the second week of the month and the fourth week of the month. Once we get started on that kind of a schedule, as long as we meet at least once every 2 to 3 weeks, that I believe, and Wendy's nodding, so apparently it's true that that would meet the needs of the timeline for hearing appeals. Ms. Hall?
I believe we need to be mindful of those work schedules of our colleagues. I don't know how that, we typically started at, 3:30 in the afternoon. So mindful of those that have work commitments.
Good point.
3:30 is a fine time for me.
Is it?
No problem there. Ms. Jones, anything in particular on your timeline?
Having the schedule in advance, yes, it's not a problem.
Okay. Ms. Hughes,
Evenings
is
are actually
there-
worse for my schedule.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, say
I
again?
said evenings are actually worse for my schedule.
So you prefer the late afternoon?
I'll go with whatever the majority prefers, but some evenings it's just hard.
Okay.
I'm working with it, so I can continue to work with it.
Okay. So do you want to make a decision now? Actually, with no known cases coming through the pipeline this summer, we've got a little bit of time to decide. We really would not have to lock it in this evening if you'd like to think about it a while.
Mr. Chair, is it possible we can table this for the work session?
Yes, there's no motion on the floor, so we don't even really have to table it. Unless someone wants to put a motion out right now, I'll suggest we come back to that issue at our next meeting. All right? So no action on discipline. All right, then, let's see, is there anything else on the schedule of meetings? I believe that covers it, and in your attachments, you have preliminary listing that you could be looking ahead to check against holiday schedules or anything else special that you know is coming up, and we could make changes on a month-by-month basis as needed. Anything else relative to the monthly schedule? All right, then we'll move on to the approval of tonight's agenda. This is an action item for approval of the remainder of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Hall.
Second.
A second from Mr. Gould. Thank you, sir. The motion is to approve the agenda. Any discussion? All right, then let's call the roll, please.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Dr. Paul Hamus?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Gould?
Yes.
Mrs. Downs?
Yes.
All right, then we move along to the approval of minutes. Several sets of minutes there for our approval this evening. All the meetings that were held in the month of June. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the minutes as they have been presented.
Thank you, Ms. Bryant. Motion to accept the minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Dr. Campbell. Thank you, sir. All right, any discussion on the approval of those minutes? All right, then please call the roll.
Dr. Paul Hamus?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Gould?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
All right, that brings us this evening to the public comment period. The lectern is available, and the general rule is 3 minutes per person. So who would like to address the board this evening? No one coming forward. Last call. All right, well, thank you for being here anyway. We'll then move right along to the consent items. The consent items include approval of the 2014 graduates, recommendations from the discipline hearing panel, and list of tuition applications. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the consent items as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Second from
Second.
Dr. Campbell. Okay. Did anyone want to pull any of those items for discussion later? Seeing none, is there any discussion on approving the consent listing? All right, then I believe we're ready to vote.
Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Gould?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Dr. Paul Hamus?
Yes. All right, then that brings us to action item from Dr. Osborne. Dr. Osborne on the organizational chart.
Thank you, Dr. Polhamus. At its April 17, 2014 meeting, the school board of the city of Danville approved an organizational chart to assist Danville Public Schools in moving forward with the initiatives at hand. A part of that approval included some new positions and some retitling of older or current positions. As we have moved through personnel actions and are looking at the titles and the services that will best serve our children, there are some organizational chart changes that I would like to present to the school board tonight for your consideration and approval. Some of the changes on the organizational chart that you have entitled 2014-15 with no date in the corner are to clean up languages, titles, and add a word or take off a word. And I will start with the left part of the chart under the Chief Human Resources Officer. There is a position, Director of Human Capital and Professional Development. At the request of the Chief Human Resources Officer, Dr. Juliet Jennings, we are requesting a change in that title to more closely align with the needs of that position, Coordinator of Talent Support and Development. There are additional changes under the Chief Academic Officer. These are no new positions. They are changes in the placement of the position as they report to an individual. The previous chart had the Coordinator of Federal Programs reporting to the Chief Instructional Officer. The title of that position has been changed to Coordinator of Title I and Title II. That change was already made administratively to reflect the responsibilities of that individual. And the change, in addition to the change of the title, to make it accurately monitor the role of the individual, is to report to the Director of Preschool and Elementary School Programs. There is also an addition on the chart that is not a new position, the Coordinator of Adult, Career, and Technical Education. That has been an existing position. This individual is listed to report to the Director of Middle and High School Programs. The next change is the elimination of the position Director of Educational Technology and Information Systems. These responsibilities will be handled by staff in our Instructional Technology Department. The position was eliminated due to the ability of current staff in place in the Technology Department to serve those needs, as well as identify dollars to be able to place services at the school site rather than to have those at the central office. There is also the addition of Coordinator of Exceptional Children's Services on the organizational chart. That position was approved by the school board in a previous meeting, but it was not placed on the organizational chart at that time, so it is being placed on the chart in the spot reporting to the Director of Student Support Services where it belongs. The next change is Child Nutritionist. It was listed on the previous org chart as Coordinator of Nutrition. The correct title is Child Nutritionist. Director of Transportation Services, we have just added the word services there. And Director of School Security and Safety, we have changed that title as it was approved, Director of Safety and Security, to reflect duties that encompass the entire division rather than just at the school site. I'll be happy to answer any questions the board might have concerning the recommended changes.
Are there questions for Dr. Osborne on the organizational chart?
Dr. Osborne, I would assume that the director, all those that were listed on the previous, say under Director of Student Support Services, these all fall within the same, under Director of Student Support Services.
The
Langston,
responsibilities.
Scholars Academy, all
Yes.
that is the same. You just did not list it on this updated
Right,
chart,
that is correct.
That hasn't changed.
Yes, Ms. Hall. The
Okay.
reason it was not listed is typically you don't see responsibilities identified on an organizational chart.
Okay.
So that was just, those changes were made in keeping with industry practice.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Osborne, do you have a figure of anticipated savings that might be redirected into the classroom or toward other needs as a result of your proposed changes?
The savings will not be a net savings, Mr. Gould, because we are putting those dollars directly back into the schools. Dr. Jennings will be presenting in just a few minutes some personnel changes and recommendations for the board to consider. And the dollars that were gained from changes in the organizational chart have been put at school sites.
Do you have a figure for the amount that's being redirected, not savings, but the amount that is associated with these changes?
Yes, it's about $350,000.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, comments for Dr. Osborne about the organizational chart? All right, then I believe this is an action item. So what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve this new organizational chart.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Bryant and Dr. Campbell, to approve the organizational chart. Any discussion? All right, then let's call the roll, please.
Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Gould?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Dr. Paul Hamus?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
All right, then the next item on our agenda will come from the Human Resources area. We have a set of personnel recommendations, and Dr. Jennings will be presenting that for us.
Good evening.
Good
evening.
You have before you the personnel recommendations prepared for your review and hopefully your approval by the Department of Human Resources. This month we bring to you 9 cases on our regular presentation page of personnel recommendations for you tonight.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would like to pull case numbers 06 and 08 for further discussion.
Cases 06 and 08. So your intent there is to discuss them in closed session this evening?
Yes, sir.
All right. Is there any discussion? Any other questions?
Those were 2 that I would like to have had pulled too. Yes.
All right, then we shall pull those two. And questions on any of the other cases? All right, then it would be appropriate for a motion to approve the personnel actions with the exception of cases 06 and 08.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell and Ms. Hughes. The motion is to approve the personnel except for cases 06 and 08. Any discussion? All right, Ms. Jordan, please call the roll.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Gould?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Dr. Paul Hamus?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Now, why is this thing doing this to me? Oh, there it is. All right, then we move to administrative appointments and assignments. And this is going to be a joint presentation, Dr. Jennings and Dr. Osborne. Who's going to go first?
You have in your red folder a nice colorful page, the heading of which administrative appointments and assignments. And these appointments and assignments are additional changes that Dr. Osborne and I are bringing to you tonight. The majority of our administrative appointments and so forth have already occurred. As you recall, you did a few last time. But with this list of 8, we are closing in on finalizing our administrative appointments. The only one that would remain would be the coordinator of exceptional children's services if you approve the list tonight. So with that, and with your permission, I would read the names and the assignment for 1450. First, we are recommending Mrs. Pam Adams as assistant principal at Schoolville Elementary. Next, we are recommending Dr. Sandra Andrews to fill the position of coordinator of talent support and development. We are recommending Mrs. Gail Brakely as instructional facilitator for George Washington High School. We are recommending Mrs. Tanya Jackson to remain as principal of Johnson Elementary, basically asking you to undo an action you took a while back, because in honesty, we need her at Johnson this year. Not that we wouldn't need her at Central, but, you know, as we always say, building level, building level, building level. And so we have asked her to do that for us, and she has agreed. Mrs. Darlene Logan is being recommended as assistant principal at Gibson Elementary. And I want to point out that this is a change Mrs. Logan requested. We're not doing anything to her, so please don't shoot me. Ms. Luann Long will actually be principal of both preschools because I have stolen Dr. Andrews to come work in human resources. Ms. Carolyn Stevens will become assistant principal at Westwood, and with this action, we are restoring the second AP position at Westwood. If you'll recall, in the budget, it had been eliminated. And this goes back to one of the questions Mr. Gould had about what are we doing with the reorg and repurposing or whatever, that sort of thing. So we are realigning and putting help at the school level. And lastly, we are recommending Mrs. Lisa Totten as assistant principal at Bonner Middle School. I can assure you that each person is highly qualified for the position for which he or she is being recommended.
Very good. Dr. Osborne, did you want to add something to these recommendations?
We are pleased to be able to bring these forward, and as Dr. Jennings indicated, based on Mr. Gould's question, we are pleased to be able to add additional services to our school sites. We believe with the completion of the filling of these positions, along with the other positions that we already have filled, we will be offering quality leadership and supervision at the school level. We also, at this point, before you cast your vote, I would like to point out an administrative appointment that you made earlier, and that is Mr. Everett Johnson. And he is with us tonight. If he will please stand so that we can recognize him.
Mr. Johnson will be principal of Schoolfield.
Yes.
Okay. If you have no further questions, we would respectfully request your approval of the 8 administrative appointments and assignments.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jennings and Dr. Osborne. What is the pleasure of the board on these recommended administrative appointments and assignments?
Chair, I move we approve.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell and Ms. Hall. Any discussion? All right, then please call the roll.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Dr. Paul Hamus?
Yes.
Mr. Gould?
Yes.
Very good. We appreciate this tremendously. A lot been happening, good things. Get ready for the children to start very soon. All right, then the next item is from the instructional area. And Ms. Smith is going to present this. It's relative to athletic training services for the upcoming school year. Ms. Smith?
Good evening. Before you, I have the recommendation for a continuation of the contract that we have in process already for athletic training services to continue for the 14-15 school year. As you know, we are getting ready to get underway with our football camp, so we are wanting to continue services with athletic training with the Danville Orthopedic Clinic and Rehabilitation Center. And this has a rollover clause for continuation of services at the same price at $24 per hour for the cost for the athletic training services. And so we are asking for your approval to continue with this contract.
Are there any questions about the technicality of extending the contract? Yes, ma'am.
No technicality question. I would just like a brief description of what these services actually provide.
Right, it's actually just when they're on this field, they're actually there to help with the training, make sure that the boys, the girls, that they're actually taken care of during that time, and you actually have someone there on staff to actually support them in the event if they're getting hurt or if there are any training or anything that they may need from the medical standpoint. So that supports their services there.
On average, how many personnel is at?
Is on site,
An event.
actually one at the time, yeah,
Okay.
actually one there.
And I believe the athletic trainer is a key piece in the concussion
Very
identification
key.
and management,
Very key,
which is so important.
very key, yes.
Other questions or comments relative to this? All right, it is an action item. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chair, I move we approve.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell, and did I hear a second from Ms. Hughes? Okay. Thank you very much. Any discussion? All right, then let's call the roll, please.
Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Dr. Paul Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Gould?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Thank you very much. All right, the next item, action relative to the school board. This is the school board code of conduct that is recommended by the Virginia School Boards Association. And I don't believe they have made any change to it from past years. I know there is a copy of it anyhow. There we go. I have the copy here for us to sign when we approve it. Have you each had a chance to review the language of the code of conduct? Are there any questions or concerns? All right, this is an action item. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chair, I move we approve.
Second.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hall and Dr. Campbell. To approve the VSBA Code of Conduct for school board members. Any discussion? Then let's call the roll, please.
Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Dr. Paul Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Gould?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And before you leave this evening, if each of you would sign the original here, we'll get that on file through Ms. Gould. Thank you very much. All right, so next item up will be the selection of a delegate and an alternate delegate for the VSBA annual meeting coming up in November.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I think Ms. Bryan was our delegate.
No.
Who was our delegate last year?
I was the delegate, and I believe Ms. Bryant was the alternate last year.
I'd like to recommend you be our delegate. Edward Paul Amos.
I would be willing to do it, but it's certainly not a requirement.
Could we do together, just have the chair and the vice chair be our representatives, or not? Is that not?
That can be done. I think many school boards do it in that fashion, but it's not a requirement.
Reverend Wilson saying that last year.
I have no problems with that.
Okay, well, I've not heard an actual motion yet. I think we're still just discussing, so. Are there any questions about the duties for the folks that we might elect tonight?
But it is permissible to have the chairman and the vice.
Yeah, I think you have to specify one as the delegate, the other as the alternate.
Okay.
But it could be tied to the positions of chair and
I know
vice chair.
if you don't specify any, that's how they list it
Okay.
at
So
the
you,
VSBA.
Yes, if we take no action, the VSBA lists the chairman as delegate and the vice chair as alternate.
so you need a motion?
that could be helpful.
I'd like to make a motion that Edward Paul Hammers be the delegate and with the alternate being Ms. Hall.
Second.
All right, I have a motion from Dr. Campbell, and a second from Ms. Dones, that I be the delegate and Ms. Hall the alternate. Any discussion on that? All right, then let's call the roll, please.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Dr. Paul Hamus?
Yes?
Mr. Gould?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
Excuse me. Thank you very much. We'll then move along to the designee to represent the acting superintendent at school board meetings in her absence. So, Dr. Osborne, what would you like to recommend here?
I recommend Dr. Juliet Jennings to represent the superintendent in her absence.
All right, you've heard the recommendation. What is your pleasure?
Chair, I move approve.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell and Ms. Hall. Any discussion? All right, then let's call for the roll, please.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Dr. Paul Hamus?
Yes.
Mr. Gould?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes.
All right, and then authorization of signatures in the absence of the superintendent. Dr. Osborne, what is your recommendation there?
In continuing the practice that has worked very well for Danville Public Schools over the last many years, I would recommend Dr. Juliet Jennings and Miss Yvette Smith.
All right, the recommendation is Dr. Jennings and Ms. Smith to sign in their areas of responsibility in the absence of the superintendent. So, what is your pleasure?
Chair, I move approve.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell, and a second over there from Ms. Hughes. Any discussion? All right, then, Ms. Jordan, please call the roll.
Dr. Paul Hamus?
Yes.
Mr. Gould?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Very good. We now move into the communications and reports. First one, item 11.1, proposed revisions to the Employee Code of Professionalism. And this comes to us through the HR department, and Dr. Jennings will be stepping to the lectern.
As each school year comes to conclusion, I prevail upon all the divisions, administrators, and the assistant city attorney to review for a possible revision that year's edition of our Employee Code of Professionalism. The draft you have in your red folders this evening shows the changes to the code that are being recommended for 2014-2015. The information being proposed for deletion is denoted by strike-through, and that being recommended for addition is underlined. These revisions are designed to add clarity. We've not added any new violations or consequences or anything of that nature. The clarity we have inserted will, we're sure, aid in not only adherence to the code, but also its administration. This agenda item is being presented for your information tonight and will be an action item at your July work session or your next meeting. For we will then be seeking your approval. Because you're just getting it tonight, in the meantime, we ask that you review the document and then feel free to contact me if you have questions, concerns, and certainly if you have suggestions. I'd be happy to respond to any questions you have at this time, and certainly be glad to receive them later on.
Are there questions or comments for Dr. Jennings on the revisions to the Employee Code of Professions.
Since we are just getting this evening, is it possible to reserve any questions we might have?
Certainly. I just wanted to clarify one thing that you mentioned in passing. You were saying that at the end of the preceding year, that administrators are asked what might help in the way of changes?
Yes.
Does this include building level administrators?
Yes, all division administrators, all division
Excellent.
administrators.
So input from that level has been obtained.
It's been sought.
It's been sought. Understood.
Clarity, Dr. Williams, clarity,
Word choice always matters, yes.
especially in human resources.
Understood. Are there any other questions before we take this home and study it in more detail? Very good. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Jennings. We'll be glad to take a look at that for you. All right, and she stays at the lectern because we're now going to have a teacher recruitment update. So, Dr. Jennings, take it away.
In the personal actions you took this evening, you hired 4 new teachers and recalled 1 for the 2014-2015 school year. In prior meetings, you recalled a total of 3 teachers for the new school year. An additional 12 new teachers are in the pipeline, which means they've been interviewed, selected, and recommended by principals. We simply await some required paperwork before bringing these candidates to you for election. As we continue to work vigorously with principals and central office administrators to fill the remaining 45 teacher vacancies, we have added a new strategy to our recruitment efforts. We now have a website dedicated solely to teacher recruitment. We are convinced that this site will most definitely assist in our securing highly qualified, effective teachers, new to the profession and veteran, for the students of DPS. In conjunction with the new website, we will use purchased Google AdWords and search engine optimization to increase our page rankings. This way, people like the 550 teachers recently laid off in Chicago, searching for teaching jobs in Virginia, will be more likely to come up on our site than on a non-optimized site. The total cost of this project, including Google AdWords, will be well under $500. And I will state here that it's mainly because of Mr. John Paris. He did not want to have any credit given, but I must do so, who worked with us to get this done. If this site, Teach in Danville, gets us even 1 highly qualified teacher who would not have otherwise known about DPS, Teach in Danville will have more than paid for itself. So now, ladies and gentlemen, our new teacher recruitment website, Teach in Danville. I draw your attention to the screen. This is the first page there, and you see we want the world to know Danville Public Schools is hiring. And we have listed, and this part at the bottom will change as our vacancies change. These are our most critical vacancies at the time, as of today, actually. Next, we have our Learn. This is Learn About Danville, Learn About Danville Public Schools. And we have included information about the city because we are part of the city of Danville. Also, you may not know that on the city's website, they also have a link to DPS and our jobs, et cetera, and so forth. So we're connected that way as well. So again, why Danville Public Schools? Next, we want them to quickly move to apply. We're keeping this simple. We don't want them to spend a lot of time reading other things. We want them to get the gist and apply. So we have our current vacancies in which they can click and get the full list. And as I mentioned in previous meetings, we now have the online application process, and this will take them straight to that. And lastly, if they want to communicate by email, we will have a dedicated email address for questions for this particular website. and we will be checking that. We have 2 staff members who will be checking it daily and responding, and we are more excited than I'm allowed to show in public. But, we just convinced this is going to help tremendously.
Bravo. And that website is teachindanville.
teachindanville.com, and you can also access it by teachindanville.org.
Either direction.
Yes,
Plus Google Ads,
Google AdWords.
AdWords. Okay.
I'm not sure what that means.
Thank you for asking that question, Ms.
Well,
Do we need John?
when you do a Google search, you
Right.
just put in certain words, and we have, it's like an ad on Google, so we have to purchase that.
Okay.
And these efforts will actually move our page up higher on the list. And also, what I've learned is the more often you click on a site, the higher it goes on the list. So click away.
We need to click away.
Click away.
That is excellent. So that's teachindanville.
teachindanville.com or teachindanville.org.
Excellent.
Whoever has the control, would you scroll back down to the most needed vacancies? Okay. I just want to make sure Earth Science is up there.
Yes, ma'am.
Earth Science is,
Very
if not the
first
top, is near the top. I make sure of that, because
on
it
there
is certainly a
twice.
hard to fill area.
Pardon?
It's on there twice.
Ah, okay.
The very
Well, that's
first and the
because
fourth listing on the left
And it's
column.
very important.
I would assume the duplicate listing is like secondary and middle, high school and middle.
Organized that way. Actually, we will be working on that. I'll double check, but right now, it's just as they have come in, quite frankly.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they still can go to our website,
Oh, certainly.
but that's not connected in any way. I mean,
Oh, yes, it is.
It's connected, yes, because
The
when you
application
go-
process.
Yes,
Gotcha.
when you hit on apply, it takes you right to the current HR apply
Right.
online. Yes.
So this is just a simpler way to get potential teaching applicants directly to where we want them to be on the site.
Exactly.
I think that is superb. Other comments or questions from board members? Well, I want to applaud everyone who's been involved in pulling this together. I know it's been done pretty quickly, but with a high level of energy and excitement and enthusiasm. And I trust that folks will go home and check it out and start getting that click count up high.
Tell your friends, tell your relatives.
Do you have to click on .com and .org to make
No.
sure they both have
No, but if you want to,
we're challenged.
Speak for yourself.
thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Jennings. And now, before we get to the comment section, I'm going to back up to something that should have been done at the very beginning of the meeting. And my apologies for not making sure it got done earlier, but we'll try to make it up and do it right at this point. We are so pleased to have with us here at the table tonight 2 brand-new members of the Danville Public School Board. Ms. Sharon Dones, right here to my left, we thank you so much for your willingness to serve the children, putting your name out for the voters, and becoming successful in your campaign for this job. And we don't really see it as a job around this table. It really is a labor of love, and we trust that you join us in that same spirit. And Mr. Gould, same comments. We appreciate so much your willingness to serve the children, and we look forward to working with you over the next several years, if not, dozens of years. You're both young enough to carry on for quite some time. All right, would anyone else like to add to that, or you want to just save it for your comments?
Comments?
Save it for comments. All right, is there any other business to come before us other than the closed meeting? All right, then I believe we're ready for the comments, and we'll start with our Assistant City Attorney.
I don't have any comments.
No comments. All right, Mr. Spencer. And then we will turn to Dr. Kathy Osborne.
Thank you, Dr. Polhamus. I'm old enough to remember the days when the day school was out till the day school began in the fall again was a downtime. You have just heard an example of how it is not a downtime for any school system anymore, particularly Danville Public Schools, as the human resources staff and everyone on staff works to make sure that we have highly qualified personnel serving in all of our positions. Summers are very busy, and as much as some individuals thought about starting after Labor Day, giving a little more time, Mr. Ramsey, to get things done in our schools, we are glad we have a calendar, and we're glad for 2 years that we do not have to agonize over when school begins in the fall. We are moving right along in Danville Public Schools with personnel, with activities, with projects, those things that we do all year long and continue in the summer. I asked Mr. Ramsey, our Director of Maintenance and Operations, to let me know where we are with our buildings. Cleaning buildings is always an extra labor over the summer because we want to make sure they're cleaned from stem to stern. And this year, as in other years, we have had many activities going on in our schools. As we have activities, that prevents us from cleaning the floors and continuing with those things. But as I pressed him for information, he said, well, I can say with confidence that our buildings are 75% ready for our students, and today is July the 8th. So we have a bit of time before students return on August the 11th, and I'm very happy for that. Thank you, Dr. Polhamus.
Thank you. Now will you please call the roll?
Okay. Mr. Gould?
It's a bit surreal to be sitting up here tonight after being in the audience the last few months, but it would be an understatement to say that I'm excited to officially be a member of the board. I want to thank my colleagues for the very warm welcome that I've received, and I believe that Ms. Jones has received as well over the last 2 months. I really do believe that the sky is the limit for what our school system can do. I think what Dr. Jennings presented to us tonight shows how tremendously hard our staff work and how they don't just work hard, they work smart as well. And that's something that we have to do in tight budgetary times. The only other thing I would want to say is I'm not going to recognize him by name tonight, but I'm excited to see a former teacher of mine in the audience who played a very big part in my development as a student at GW, and I'll never be able to tell him how adequately convey to him how thankful I am for the role that he played in helping me get here. So I'm excited to be here and look forward to working with everyone.
Ms. Downs?
I knew she was going to call me. I'd just like to say I am elated to be here. I can't even describe the feeling right now, but my primary goal is to serve the children and the parents. I think that at the end of the day, that should be our primary focus. But I'm also here to try and help bridge the gap between parents and teachers and administrators as well. I thought long and hard before actually deciding to run to be here, and then I thought, second guessing myself, but I just can't, it's like a roller coaster ride, and now it's time to coast to see exactly what we can do for you and you can do for us. So again, I'm elated to be here.
Ms. Bryant?
I want to thank Mr. Gould and Ms. Jones for joining us up here. I know that it's going to be a wonderful board year for all of us. I want to thank all of the rest of my colleagues for being such wonderful administrators for the City of Danville Public Schools. I want to thank all of you that are here for spending your time with us this evening. I spent 33 years in the classroom. I do have a passion for children. I took a year off opening my own business, and for 2 years I have been here still working on my passion for children. And I know that most of you have that same wonderful passion, even though sometimes we have a lot of stress with it. And I don't care what they say, it is work, so it's work. It may be a passion, but it's work. And I appreciate everybody that helps Danville Public Schools be ready and on task and able to open and spend a school year with our children. So thank you very much to everybody that is affiliated with the City of Danville Public Schools.
Dr. Campbell?
I would like to say, first of all, congratulations to Dr. Edward Paul Hamus, the chairman, and to Ms. Hall as being the vice, and to Stephen and Sharon. Thank you for being a part of the team. I think, if I can remember verbatim, that Dr. Paul Hamus said that this is a labor of love. I would like to add it's also a labor of time. And as we move forward, you will understand what that means. And to all of the persons that work in DPS, I hope you're enjoying the summer. And whether you've gone out of town, I know some, I think I know who Stephen was talking about. I'm not going to call that name, but works at George Washington, that travels all over the world.
The elderly statesman of GW.
But we hope that you're enjoying the summer and that you'll be refreshed to make sure that our students are college and career ready. On somewhat of a sad note, I know most of you have heard about the passing of a George Washington student, and so to the Harris family, our heart goes out to you in condolences, and we just hope that you will keep the faith and that all is well. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes, thank you for your congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Gould. I'm honored to have been nominated as vice chair and for the support of my colleagues in this position. That means a great deal to me. I want to welcome the new board members. I'm so delighted to have you all on board. It was difficult saying goodbye to the outgoing board members, but the new board members always bring such new, fresh ideas, and I'm just really looking forward to working with you both. Congratulations, Dr. Paul Hamus, on providing another year, excuse me, of leadership. And thank you to all the staff. There's so many staff members out in our audience tonight for all your hard work, and if you've been working over the summer, we're so appreciative of that. And Dr. Jennings, from the HR perspective, thank you. And this website, I'm really excited about. I hope we see lots of good things from that. Thank you.
Ms. Hughes?
Well, here we are. I'm sure there's a joke somewhere about being stuck between two lawyers. I'll find it. Welcome to Ms. Jones, Mr. Gould. Congratulations to Dr. Paul Hamus and Ms. Hall. I look forward to moving on from this point. We're heading into a new year and hopefully getting our ducks in a row and forging ahead and making the best for Danville Public Schools and all the students and staff and everyone in Danville, making this a happy place to work and to grow and to learn. Thank you.
Dr. Paul Hamus?
I'd like to thank my colleagues for their confidence as displayed in re-electing me as chair. I will pledge to give my very best efforts to lead us forward, and I look forward very much to working with the new vice chair, Ms. Hall. And I thank so many people for coming out tonight on a very hot day with plenty of other things that you could have done. To be here in support of the work of this board and the work of Danville Public Schools is a fine testament, and we appreciate you being here to deliver that. I certainly want to thank everyone who has been working so hard to accomplish the necessary things over these summer months, to get the buildings ready for the opening, to get the bus fleet all ready to roll again, to do, hundreds of contracts, double checking every little detail to make sure they are exactly right, and to do the necessary hiring to make sure that we have all those highly qualified new people in position when the schools open their doors is a tremendous task that is being managed very effectively this summer, and we thank everyone for their involvement in that. I also want to stress again the joy that I feel in seeing that brand new website tonight. You might want to think of it as a back door into our site that just takes them right to the kitchen, right where they want to be. So teachindanville.org. That's something that I think is going to benefit us tremendously. So I thank you all for being here this evening, and I think I would now want to entertain a motion for about a 10-minute recess.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Bryant with a second.
Ms. Hall.
Ms. Hall?
Oh, Ms. Hall said that, okay. Motion from Ms. Hall with a second from Dr. Campbell to take a 10-minute recess. Any discussion? All right, then let's call the roll, please.
Mr. Gould?
Yes.
Dr. Paul-Hamus?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes?
Yes.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell? Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
Ms.
Yes.
Downs?
Yes.
Yes.